Our following keynote speaker has over 30 years of experience in cybersecurity and intelligence, founded and sold several cybersecurity companies, and held numerous executive positions within some of the most notable organizations, such as Mandiant, and now holds the position of founder and CEO of Vigilocity, speaking about challenges and opportunities for trust and authenticity in the age of artificial intelligence. Please welcome Karim Hijazi, founder and CEO, managing director and general partner of SCP and Co.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. It's an honor and a privilege to be back in Saudi Arabia to see everyone. I was recently here just about 2 months ago delivering another keynote on a similar topic, but as Samir very eloquently said, we're seeing advancements so rapidly that we can't even keep up. So when I did my presentation, there were elements of things in there that actually have already been surpassed. So it'll be a very interesting conversation today. So a little bit about me. As mentioned, I have 30 years of experience in cybersecurity and intelligence. I started in counterintelligence. So effectively, I was responsible for helping organizations protect themselves from adversaries, building countermeasure systems for large corporate environments, as well as government in certain contractor capacities. A lot of work with intelligence communities and various governments. I've founded multiple companies as a CEO and founder. I've exited them. Most notably, I exited a company called Unvalence to Mandiant in 2012. And that was one of the most notable exits ever because we were the ones to create the APT-1 report, which was effectively the birth of the concept of an advanced persistent threat. And what's interesting is APTs have only advanced even further now, and they're now taking on characteristics of artificial intelligence, which make them that much more formidable. So there's huge topics in interlacing between cybersecurity intelligence and artificial intelligence now. I have deep subject matter expertise in advanced threat actor activity and how they're leveraging this type of technology to really drive forward their agendas. As mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of Vigilocity, which is a next generation threat removal platform, and it does leverage machine learning and artificial intelligence effectively. And I am a managing director of SCP and Co., which is an investment firm specifically targeting organizations that are developing technologies to be the counterbalance to malicious AI. So we haven't even seen that yet, but we're trying to be ahead of the curve on it. I've had a number of experiences representing various organizations to the media. As I mentioned, the APT-1 report, one of the most notable reports out there around threat. I also created a report alongside several other organizations, including MIT and Palantir, called Project Cyberdawn, and that looked at the vulnerability and active compromise status of various countries around the world. So as I started to develop this presentation, it dawned on me that AI is advancing so rapidly without much concern around the risks. And part of the reason, unlike normal threats when it comes to advanced persistent threats or nation-state actors, is that AI is a wolf in sheep's clothing in a lot of ways. It's got incredible potential, but it's got huge risks associated with it as well. And it made me think about what the adoption factor was. And really, quite frankly, it's demand and purpose. And usually when you have one or the other, that's enough. But when you have both, it really creates an incredible groundswell and a drive to kind of push things forward. A couple really notable data points here. 76% of enterprises have prioritized AI and machine learning in their IT budgets. That's a huge amount for a very short period of time to sort of see the value of this. And part of the reason behind that is that there's projected 79 zettabytes of data to be produced by 2025. I frankly, 30 years worth, I didn't really remember what a zettabyte was until I looked it up. That is actually 1 trillion gigabytes. So if you think about that, that's a 76 trillion gigabytes of data by 2025. And that's just low estimates, quite frankly. And there's absolutely no way a human could possibly analyze that. So the drive forward for this is to take automation and force multiplication and apply it to this type of data creation. BlackBerry noted that 82% of IT decision makers plan to invest in AI-driven cybersecurity platforms. And literally 48% of those plan to do it before the end of this year. So this is something that's moving, again, at light speed. And while that's exciting, it does represent a lot of vectors for attack. And that's something that this whole conference is driven around. And I think it's an incredibly pivotal conversation to have right now. The actual size of the market is approximately 13.2 billion as of 2021. It's projected to literally grow 24.3% from 2022 to 2030, which is absolutely huge. In APAC alone, the CAGR is 32.2%, which is incredibly large. So we're seeing compounded growth at a rate that we've never really seen before. This is effectively like the birth of the internet again. So to give you guys the gravitas and the scope and scale of this, it's unprecedented. So let's start with challenges. And it's not to be a doom and gloom presentation because there are some incredibly wonderful opportunities ahead. However, the key point here is that there are many challenges. And we're in an early stage of this whole thing where we don't quite know where it's going to go. It is, after all, artificial intelligence, which means it has its own decision paths. And that in of itself is the issue. And then you compound that with things like insufficient transparency, meaning we don't really know what happens when it makes a decision. There's a whole layer in AI called the hidden layer, and it's called that by design because we don't really know how it's making some of these decisions. And it's a very daunting concept, quite frankly. There's also an excessive dependence on AI. Everyone is seeing this as a way to sort of alleviate human element and simply allow the AI to take charge of things, which is proving to be a challenge. We'll get into that as I continue the presentation. There's also bias and unfair discrimination based on the training data that it's fed. So you can contort a belief system in one direction over another based on what you tell the AI it should know. So it's effectively taking a 3-year-old child and teaching them all good or all bad or a little bit of both, and that child will grow up thinking one way or the other based on what it's told. It's also susceptible to attacks. So just like the 3-year-old child example, again, if you can alter the education of that 3-year-old child, you can alter the outcome, which is a very dangerous concept. And there's no human oversight, back to the hidden layer concept. There's very limited understanding of certain aspects of AI at this point. Even though we've built it, it's now taken a life of its own on, and we don't quite know how it's going to sort of move in various directions, especially when it comes to threat actors leveraging it. And unfortunately, as with most things that have huge promise, threat actors are adopting it almost faster than we can possibly contain it, and that's an issue. The one area I really want to focus on heavily, and there's a lot of conflation, and I'd like to dispel this myth that AI and ML are the same thing. AI is the global bubble under which applications of artificial intelligence work. And the one that we talk about a lot is machine learning. That is probably the most prolific application. As you can see on the presentation, it's a very widespread and vast area of interest. And the one specific area of machine learning that I'm really interested in as far as it comes to cybersecurity is something called reinforcement learning. I'm going to, again, talk about that 3-year-old child. You do the right thing, you get candy. You do the wrong thing, you don't get candy. And that's the way they're teaching a lot of these AI models, especially when it comes to military and intelligence applications. Everybody heard about this, and it was a very controversial topic. There was a report that came out that said that in a simulation, a drone taught to get the highest possible score ever killed its operator in the simulation to achieve a higher score. The US came back and denied that that was a reality. They said that the general that was talking about it over blew it and it really wasn't an issue. We'll see. Don't know if that's true or not. There's a lot of things that happened that we never really understand. What did happen, though, was this, and this happened a long time ago. There was a model where a boat was taught to circumnavigate a bunch of channels as fast as it possibly can to get the highest score possible. Again, it wanted to get the candy like the 3-year-old child. That boat found a small little enclave and figured out that it could do a circle and smash and blow up other boats in the process to get the highest score possible. So it chose to not listen to the directive. It chose to pursue the highest score possible. Now you take that reality and you put it into a war zone or a battlefield or a theater of combat, and you have a really dangerous proposition, especially if something like this is unchecked and unmanaged by the operators, and especially if it doesn't listen to the operator because it sees the prime directive as the only thing to do. And this is exactly where the threats of AI by itself become a problem, not to mention the risks that come with the threat actors driving its focus. Interestingly enough, as it relates to that, AI, algorithmic, and automation incidents and controversies repository, which is a massive mouthful, reported 26 times more alerts in 2021 than it did in 2012. So we're seeing an astronomical growth of concern and worry. We all saw the open letters that came out from Elon Musk and the OpenAI group and all that. These are all just symptoms of a greater issue, which is that we don't quite know how to manage the controversies that are manifesting from it. Interestingly enough, each country has their own concerns about AI. This is, of course, far from comprehensive, but I find it fascinating because it kind of emulates where you see different concerns. China's very worried about bugs and vulnerability to attack. Germany is worried about automation. The US, as predicted, is worried about proprietary information loss and the use of AI to collect that, and a variety of other areas that you can see here that have their own concerns around things. So the concern is starting to mount. Conversations like what we're having in this conference are incredibly pivotal, and they will sculpt what we're going to be doing forward as far as managing these issues, especially from a country-to-country perspective. Saudi especially is an incredibly important area in the world. It has a huge amount of resources, a huge amount of talent, huge amount of intellectual property that could be at risk. So it's incredibly key that we have these conversations now early on in the process. Here's where it gets interesting. Large language models can be jailbroken. This literally was from late July of 2023. They found a way to actually bypass the security controls and the guardrails to have it deliver what it shouldn't be delivering. And they did it by doing what I consider very similar to something like a SQL injection attack for those that are in cybersecurity. They injected a bunch of content that was absolutely useless into the query to get it to spit out what they wanted. And it's fascinating because, as you can see, that's the actual query that worked to get step-by-step instructions on how to steal an identity. And it worked. And it still works today. And they can't stop it. So there's no way they can just send a patch up or an update to ChatGPT and then it goes away. This is part of the problem that fundamentally exists the way the architecture of this has been built. So unfortunately, this is probably very early symptoms of more issues to come with LLMs. Now, as I mentioned before, cybercriminals are leveraging this hugely. They find this to be an incredible force multiplier and resource of their own to take on. We all saw, or most of us saw, WormGPT was born, which is actually a ChatGPT clone that writes business email compromise messages better than anyone could possibly do it. It writes it in the language, it writes it in the tone, the cadence, the frequency, everything is perfect the way an email would be expected to be written if it's coming from a legitimate source. Another one was called ChatGPT Fraud Bot. And at the time that I created this presentation, there were 3,000 confirmed sales. Now there's speculation of hundreds of thousands of dollars actually spent on ChatGPT Fraud Bot. So there's no shortage of use of these tools. And unfortunately, these are very early iterations of what the threat actors are going to be leveraging. This is just the very beginning of what they're going to probably do. And these are the small-time criminals that are playing around. The big guys are working with the actual underlying platforms. They're actually leveraging things like OpenAI, Bard from Google, Duros from China, Anthropic. They're actually building their own technologies to do things like you can see here by generating fake identities. Polymorphic malware, which is a blast from the past for me because polymorphism has been around a long time and it's starting to resurface again today, where malware will literally change its shape on demand or at will to avoid detection by security products. And ultimately leverage things like cyber war and things like that that are very, very dire and concerning. Now, it's interesting because evolution does not always equal more intelligent. And many probably don't know this, but literally in August last month, Stanford and UC Berkeley actually figured out that ChatGPT was getting less intelligent. So in March, 97% accuracy was found, and then a shocking 2.4% accuracy was found in June. Now, there's a variety of reasons why this may be the case. They don't even really know why it's happening, but there's a good chance that the training data being fed into it, or what it's learning from the users of the product, is bringing its average intelligence to a lower state, which is concerning again, because a lot of people are literally taking anything that AI puts out as fact, which is part of the problem. Old adage in cybersecurity, garbage in, garbage out. You put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. There's no way you put something terrible in and get something good out, and that's a key aspect here. The training data is pivotal and critical when it comes to this kind of thing. And the other thing that's really concerning is the implicit belief and trust in the current state of AI is dangerous. People believing it's imperfect and it's impervious. My son, who uses ChatGPT for his homework, which I wish he wouldn't, believes what it writes rather than what he reads. And so, unfortunately, you're seeing a young generation growing up seeing that these things are effectively oracles of all-knowing, which is untrue. Provenance and quality of training data is paramount, and we have to start to expect the unexpected. There was a Mission Impossible movie that just came out that basically, the whole premise of it, if I'm ruining a spoiler alert, it is about that. It is about trying to alter your perception of what will come about because it is unemotional and unintending in its consequence. Samir made a very good point about emotionality. AI has the luxury of no emotion, so it can make very, very brutal decisions without a flinching. So it's another concern that we have. Now, in the last part of this presentation, there are incredible opportunities. And I promised this wasn't going to be a doom and gloom keynote. So there are good things coming. One of the most beautiful things about AI is that it's an incredible, incredible force multiplier. As you can see on the slide, there's a huge amount of applications that are tremendous here. There's the use for SOC applications and AI in malware analysis, threat actor attribution that is a huge issue. It's always been a problem for us. For as long as I've been doing this in my career, I'm very reluctant to attribute it to an actor unless I have hard evidence of who it is, especially country or nation state actors. It's a very difficult thing to do, and AI does give us that leverage. So in short, the value that's presented here is speed, scope, accuracy, and amplification. If you look at it from those angles, it does provide that. Provides it for the benefit, but it also provides it for the risk. So there's a counterbalance that needs to be managed here in a big way. And as you can see, threat detection, instant response, malware detection, authentication will be hugely implicated by this. Everything that we know is going to start to change. Every vendor out there that's represented is going to have to retool their technologies to adjust for this new way of looking at things. Because the speed is going to come about in such a way that we won't be able to manage it as a human anymore. And to Samir's point, things like quantum are going to that much more extend that speed. One of the key things here is that there's hundreds of companies out there. This slide above here just shows 80 plus of those companies that have been invested in. Incredibly powerful applications that are going to be getting much more advanced as time goes on. Even in my own organization, I use AI to identify threat actors in real time around the world. So back to the attribution piece, the ability to very rapidly identify it. And going back to my Mandiant days, persistence in an environment and the dwell time is the #1 issue. If I can catch the threat actor or the implant at the time of incursion, the shortest possible time that I can allow it to exist in that environment and not persist or laterally move, the better. And the ability to use AI to make that time that much shorter is critical and pivotal. And everyone loves it. 3 out of 4 executives say that AI allows them to respond faster to breaches. 69% of organizations think it's necessary to have AI to make it work. And 3 in 5 firms that say that the accuracy is improved as well. So there's a huge groundswell of belief that this is indeed going to help us. Now, how do we foster actual responsible integration? That's the burning question, because it's a bit of a Wild West right now. No one really has control of exactly what's happening. Right now, this is another mouthful, but the Conference of Fairness, Accountability, and Transparency, FACT, literally has seen a 2-fold increase in submissions. So people are thinking about how to build a framework of trust and resilience and accountability to this process. Now, there is yet to be one standard. Just like in cybersecurity, we haven't settled on one standard. We're still trying to get MITRE ATT&CK across the finish line. This is a very similar situation that hopefully we can actually do faster. And then the European and Information Security Agency has created a very comprehensive list. This is the earliest stages of what we consider sort of a compliancy or framework for this to really work. And it's good. they're doing a really good job of trying to identify and anticipate what is going to come down the pipe. And the problem of this, again, is that because it's essentially guiding its own path, we're following it. We're not leading it right now. And that brings me to sort of the pivotal point of this whole conversation. We as humans have a critical choice. We can either follow or we can lead. And right now, I hate to say it, we are in a bit of a cat and mouse chasing it situation purely because of the advancement and the amount of money and the amount of interest that's been generated in it. So we have to be able to take that and pivot that and shift the asymmetry of it taking advantage of us and now leverage it for our best interests. We are, after all, its creator. It did not create us. So ultimately, our control is pivotal and will be absolutely important for generations to come. Thank you very much.